Okay, so one of the reasons that I'm here, that I'm giving this talk, is that the last time I was here, I'll say a little bit about myself. I am a yoga teacher, a restorative yoga teacher, and I'm a integrative health practitioner, and I just recently retired from UCSF Osher Center for Integrative Health. And
Can you speak into the microphone?
oh, is that better if I'm a little closer? Thank you. Yeah. So the last time I was here at the library, I gave a presentation on the blue zones. And for those of you who are not familiar, the blue zones are areas around the world where people live long and healthy lives. And it's all well and good what we each do individually, but if we don't have a healthy society, it's almost impossible to live a long, healthy life. And especially given the amount of stress that this current environment is precipitating, it made me think about health in a kind of a deeper societal way. And I thought of this book, Ecotopia, which I did read back in the 70s, and it stayed with me. I mean, how many hundreds of books I've read since then, and yet this book resonates across the ages. And then this particular version of it that I got at the bookstore, it actually has a little, he calls it an epistle to ecotopians, a little afterword that they found on his computer after he died in 2012. And I do quote extensively from that as well as we get into that presentation. So without further ado, let us carry on. Oops. What's happening here? Okay. Okay, here we go. So in 1975, Ernest Callenbach wrote a novel imagining the future. Northern California, Washington, and Oregon secede from the USA, and they form a government based on sustainability, community, and creativity. Eco from the Greek, meaning household or home, and topia, also from the Greek, meaning place. So home place, that's what ecotopia translates to. And in his own words, he said, this is not science fiction, it's political fiction. And that survival and happiness depend on the biological bottom line. And so the protagonist, William Weston, is a reporter from the United States, and he's the first one to visit Ecotopia 20 years after secession. The novel alternates between his official reporting in his newspaper, which they call the Times Post, which I thought was interesting, and his more candid journal entries. He starts out as a cynic and gradually becomes enamored of the ecotopian lifestyle. And in fact, he doesn't go back to the United States at the end of the novel. So Ernest Callenbach was a pretty interesting guy. He was born in 1929 and he died in 2012, and he was a simple living advocate. He was on the staff of the University of California Press. He was an editor of the Film Quarterly, and he wrote this book, Ecotopia, and he shopped it around all the publishers, and he couldn't find anybody who would publish it. So he scraped the money together and self-published it. And it turns out he sold over 1 million copies, which is pretty amazing for a self-published book, especially in 1975. And then he wrote some more books. He wrote like a prequel after, I don't know what you call that, but it was called Ecotopia Emerging. And he wrote a book called Living Poor with Style in 1972 that a friend of mine who just recently moved from San Francisco to Western rural Pennsylvania, which is where he was from, she brought that book with her. After she'd gotten rid of all of her belongings, she took that book with her. I thought that was very interesting. So he was influenced, certainly by the times that he lived in, the 70s. It was a very different time than today. There was some very radical thinking going on, and he was friends with Edward Abbey, who wrote The Monkey Wrench Gang, and I read that book, and the only thing that stuck with me from that book was that they put sugar into the gas tanks of the FBI agents or something like that. It was radical uh, radical actions. And he was also friends with this guy, Amory Lovins, who started the Rocky Mountain Institute. And he was interested in a soft energy path. And one of his quotes that stayed with me all these years is, using nuclear energy to create electricity is like using a chainsaw to cut butter, that it's not an appropriate use of such a strong technology, such a dangerous technology. So in this book, Ecotopia, San Francisco is the capital city. And Market Street, he imagines it to be a pedestrian-centric mall planted with thousands of trees. There's only 2 lanes of traffic for electric taxis, minibuses, delivery carts. There are bike lanes and fountains and sculptures and kiosks and gardens surrounded by benches. And there are free driverless electric buses, almost like little platforms that just move and you just sort of step on them and step off where you want. They only go 10 miles an hour, but they run every 5 minutes up Market Street. Kind of a radical thing. One of the things is everyone works 20 hours a week, which allows time for creativity and recreation and rest. Some of the ideas he had, the teachers run the schools, and students are taught practical skills like gardening, cooking, carpentry, plumbing, along with academic subjects. He himself grew up in a very rural situation where they had to patch their clothes, they had to do repair all the farm equipment themselves. So he was very self-sufficient kind of guy. He talks a lot about healthcare given in small neighborhood clinics. The hospitals are small, and all this is close to my heart. The nurses are trained and deliver massage therapy to all the patients. And the doctors and nurses share duties. There aren't as many specialists. It's a more egalitarian system. And ecotopians prefer to die at home. One of the things he thought about was biodegradable plastic, that the housing was made out of extruded tubes and they would glue the sections together to make different shapes. And this is an idea that he had, that things would be usable, would have a lifespan and they would be usable and then they would biodegrade. So, these are some of the things that are, let's see if I can get this thing to move over. Let's have a hard time with it. There we go. Some of the prescient features. Whoops. I'm going to go back here. Sorry. Some of the prescient, excuse me a minute. Sorry. So some of the prescient features of Ecotopia. So no cars on Market Street. In 1975, that was pretty radical. And we've experimented with that, and I'm not sure it's worked out the way we thought it would. Oops. I'm trying to get this. Could you help me with this, Amanda? Move this bar out of the way.
Maybe put it on the side.
This.
Oh, yeah, because it's hard to see your mouse.
Yeah, I know. I'm having trouble seeing the mouse. Yeah. Maybe if I escape out of here for a minute.
Maybe if you just
where you can put the dock on the side.
Yeah, under more.
Under more, there's a way to get, sorry. Hide video panel. No.
Also,
I think maybe the meeting panel.
Sorry, go, if you click more again,
Yeah.
it says, like hide. Yeah, hide meeting controls.
There we go. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, let me go back to sharing. Okay, let me go back to, where am I? Sorry. Oop. Oop. Play, here we go. Okay, thank you. Thanks. Yay, teamwork. Okay. So some of the prescient features of Ecotopia. So no cars on Market Street, and the median is filled with gardens, outdoor cafes. And, we actually have more outdoor cafes now than we used to. Free autonomous mini electric buses every 5 minutes. Well, we don't have that. Free white bicycles. I think that was an idea he borrowed from Amsterdam because they had white bicycles. But what they did in Amsterdam was they stole everybody's bicycle and painted them white and then just distributed them around town. And, not everybody was happy with that. But, it's sort of the idea of the whole lift bike thing. That's where that came from. Downtown office buildings turn residential, mixed use. We're certainly exploring that. Daylighting streams and waterfalls. We've done some of that. Maglev trains between cities. Why don't we have that? I don't know. He thought of separate recycling bins and composting. You have to remember, 1975, there was just garbage. There wasn't any recycling then. Organic farming, no processed food, free range farm animals. He was thinking about regenerative agriculture. And this one blew my mind. People are talking on picture phones. I mean, in 1975, I don't think I thought about that. So I did want to talk a little bit about the principles of ecology. Ecology is actually a subject that I studied in high school, and it was a kind of an emerging science at that point. And so life is organized into communities of mutual support, known as ecosystems. And if you think about various ecosystems like the mushrooms and the forests, the mushrooms help support the forest, and the forest helps support the mushrooms. Insects and flowers, the insects help the flowers reproduce, and the flowers help nourish the insects. There's coral reefs, and the anemones and clownfish have a mutually beneficial relationship. And another concept in ecology is that populations occupy specific niches, such as, underground, like gophers, and then you have the ground dwellers, like the squirrels, and then the treetops, you have the birds and the eagles. So every species is in their own little niche. And based on ecological principles of balance to have a healthy ecosystem, we need to reduce, reuse, recycle, and recover materials. There are symbiotic relationships that things help each other survive. There are communities of mutual support. And one of the big ideas in Ecotopia is that things would be made out of components, that you would manufacture components, and then as things break down, they are replaced and reused rather than tossed away. Another idea in ecology is succession. And an illustration of that is fire is necessary for pine trees to germinate. So beech trees may thrive in a wetter climate, but then if there's a fire, then the pine trees dominate because the pine trees germinate with fire. And populations shift as climate changes. Trees that need a cooler climate will grow in higher altitudes as the lower altitudes get hotter. And then the animals follow the trees. The habitats adjust to conditions. And either life adapts or it goes extinct. And there are various survival mechanisms like migration to travel to where the food is, hibernation when food is scarce in the wintertime, and adaptation, birds changing color in response to the environment. There's a study about pigeons in London that they were darker when they were burning more coal, when there was more pollution in the air. The pigeons got darker for camouflage. So interesting. So here's kind of just a visual of how generally we do things now. We take it, we make it, we use it, we dispose of it somehow, and then it oftentimes leads to pollution. And that there's another way that you could make stuff and use it and then reuse it and remake it and recycle it. truly recycle it. There's another kind of visual about sustainability, that you could have a society based on sustainability, and that would support your social life, your environmental, and your economic well-being as well. So here's where I'm going to give you a lot of words on the slide, which I know you're not supposed to do. But this is from his website, and I don't know exactly when he wrote this, but I just found it pretty compelling. And it's a modest proposal: the coming eco-industrial complex. We must rebuild our cities in the proven compact forms of the world's great cities to reduce our dependence on petroleum-fueled cars. Our sprawling suburbs need to be transformed from cultural wastelands into communities with healthy centers and creative cultural richness that cities have traditionally offered. A lot of tracks need to be laid and urban and suburban concrete poured. If we can walk to transit stops like New Yorkers, we will even lose weight and live longer. If Bechtel can build mega airports, civil and military, it can certainly build eco-cities. I think he was thinking about suburban sprawl, because that was certainly happening in the 70s. We must develop a universal recycling system so that all major materials, steel, paper, glass, aluminum, wood, plastic, even water, will be in a steady and predictable supply without sabotaging our support system, the natural order. A giant job-intensive industry must be created here. We must restore our forests, fisheries, agriculture to stable, net positive productivity. At present, we are cutting more timber than we grow and catching more fish than can reproduce. We're even putting far more petroleum-based calories into agriculture than we get out in food calories. In essence, we are eating oil, a non-renewable resource. And if we eat lower on the food chain and cut down on livestock, we will reduce our climate impacts even more than by getting rid of private cars. We must put people to work, restoring our rivers, waterfronts, wetlands, trashed by generations of engineers, dumpers, and developers. Carry on with what the New Deal started. Well, some of this, is of his time. So. One way I've devised of talking about some critical everyday regularities is what I call the green triangle. It's a handy means of generating for ourselves ideas for personal and community and national change. Matters ecological are also inevitably social. We can't do it all ourselves. And when I read that, I was like, yeah, that's why I'm giving this talk, because one person can't do this. We have to, as a society, do this together. And the 3 points of the triangle are environment, health, and money. The principle that relates to these 3 points is anytime you do something beneficial for one of them, you almost inevitably also do something beneficial for the other two, whether you are aiming to or not. Walking instead of driving, better yet, push a bike lane system through your local government. So we've done some of that. We're on the path for that. Cut down pollution. There's a lot to be hopeful about. We can envision a lively and inventive and wholesome future of sustainable shrinkage. Sustainable shrinkage. Wow, that is such a great concept. Because we'll have to respond to real world constraints. It will look something like my Ecotopia, though every bioregion and cultural region will invent its own adaptations. It will host new ideas about everything from microbiology to cosmology, with biology the central science, not physics. Our descendants will enjoy new ways of living and working together. They will probably wonder, if they bother to look back, how we ever lived in such extravagant and wasteful ways. But they will share hopes that we can only dimly envision. We who are alive now are all runners on their behalf in the marathon of hope for the earth. When necessary, we will carry on against grim odds, but we must never give up that hope. And so actually, in some ways, we already are emulating Ecotopia. Just recently, California, Oregon, Washington, and Hawaii form a West Coast Health Alliance for vaccine guidance. And the Northeast, there's a medical alliance of Vermont and Rhode Island, as federal confusion reigns at the CDC. So I thought this was such a cute graphic of California, Oregon, and Washington. The cow. I love the plaid shirt and the coffee and the the axe and the little rain cloud and grapes. There's hope, but there's also reasons for concern. Climate change is affecting every migratory species on Earth, from the Arctic to the Amazon. Marine heat waves are jamming the ocean's natural carbon conveyor belt, blocking carbon from sinking to the deep sea, altering the food webs. The breakdown in the carbon pump could amplify climate change. Heat bleaching is destroying the coral reefs and the ecosystem that depends on them. And then there's microplastics, which I think we're just starting to get our minds around, and how it's affecting our bodies. I think we'll find out more about this in the coming years, but they seem to be pro-inflammatory and they produce changes in the microbiome. But there are some positive developments around the world. I did want to make this kind of a positive talk. And in the Sahara Desert, they have this giant solar array made out of mirrors mostly, and they can store the energy in molten salt so they can use the solar energy after dark. There's wind energy in the Mojave Desert, and last year the United States generated more electricity from wind and solar combined than from coal. Another really positive thing is that solar energy has become really cheap. It's become cheaper than coal. So I'm kind of hopeful that the economic reality will drive the climate reality. Floating solar is a great option because the cooling effects of the water boosts the efficiency of the solar panels, and it also conserves water by reducing evaporation. Covering the California aqueduct with solar panels is something that I read as a letter to the editor like 30 years ago, and now finally we're doing it, so that's encouraging. And if you have floating panels on a reservoir, then you're not impacting the land use for agriculture or housing. And there are also other potentials for solar panels for roofing, fencing, carports, window coverings. If we were to put our attention and our energy and our resources into developing our solar capabilities, we could be really in good place. In France, they have tree-shaped wind turbines that generate clean energy silently on city streets. And Iceland, and now I just read today that Iceland is not the only place that's almost 100% renewable energy. There were a few other countries also, but Iceland is unique in that they have incredible geothermal capabilities and that they produce electricity and heat, and they also fix carbon. They've found a way to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and store it in underground rocks. So this is the epistle to the Ecotopians, which is, when I read it, it made the little hairs on my forearm stand up, and it was one of the things that gave me the idea to give this talk. And this was found on his computer after his death in 2012. And his intention was to gather together some thoughts and attitudes that may prove useful in the dark times we are facing, a century or more of exceedingly difficult times. And I thought, wow, 2012, things look pretty good in 2012, especially from, the vantage point of 2025. But he was prescient. How will those who survive manage it? What can we teach our friends, our children, our communities? Although we may not be capable of changing history, how can we equip ourselves to survive it? And so his main points were hope, mutual support, practical skills, to organize, and to learn to live with contradictions. Succession. Disturbances kill off an ecosystem, but little by little, new plants take over, finally achieving a flourishing, resilient, complex state. Sustainability can be achieved locally, socially, economically. Everything is connected. Things evolve. Wabi-sabi, the old transform into something else. And finally, let us embrace decay, for it is the source of all new life and growth. And now I'd like to open the floor to discussion. What did this make you think about? Maybe before we do that, we could do a little bit of guided imagery. I'm going to ask you to sit comfortably on your chair, put your feet on the floor, bring your attention to your breath. Feel your belly rise and fall with each breath. And just let your imagination soar. If you could imagine the world any way, what things would you change? What would you like to see as your own new reality? Never mind what's happening. What would you like to see happen? What would make the greatest change? Now, if you'd like to open your eyes, bring yourself back to this room. What would you like to see? I'll start. I think one thing we really need to do is to actually account for the full lifespan of things. That we buy things and we use them and then we throw them away, and we don't really take into account that there's really no away. There's only the planet. And so we need to utilize the things that we have better. More reuse. Yeah.
All right, I went to the No Kings rally in San Francisco, and I was struck by how friendly everyone was to each other and respectful. So that was interesting to me.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a more effective, robust, recycling program that's truly recycling maybe 80 to 90% of what, because most of the quote unquote plastic, even with that triangle symbols, go into the landfill. There's no market. So it may have to be government subsidized, but we also need, federal government or whoever to do the hard R&D, because, basically, and, the chemical industry's been, oil industry promoting recycling. Now they're being held accountable. You're supporting something that doesn't really work. You maybe need to create products that are truly recyclable, certain types of plastic. So the R&D to create something that could break down, maybe an alternative to plastic, but I don't think we could get away from plastic for now. So we have a broken market. Third world countries are not taking our plastics anymore. The market has collapsed. San Francisco is probably head above shoulder in terms of recycling, but I still think that we probably recycle less than 50% of our plastic and stuff. I
Yeah,
don't have the exact
where does it-
number, but it's a
right.
very small number and stuff like that. And I can only imagine what other states are doing or not doing. So, but has to be a national and a scientific technical solution. It's doable, but it's just, maybe some, AI, infused research could say, look at, different types of chemical constituents, give us a
Yeah.
product that can truly break down and recycle and stuff, but it would have to be subsidized.
That's a great point. Yeah. Things that actually break down into
Yeah.
biodegrade, like actually things that are helpful for the soil.
And all right, alternative plastic that are not,
Yeah,
chemical oriented.
right. Yeah.
Even if you support the recycled products and purchasing, that would say, I only buy recycled products. The cost is so much greater than buying something new. So I think that in thinking about this new, and I totally agree with the idea of things being completely biodegradable. That's the best way to go, or just to keep reusing what you have to, don't ever buy new.
Yeah.
Don't ever do that, just find something else. But I think there has to be a program that makes it accessible and attractive.
Yeah.
I mean, some of us can afford to buy a product that costs more to save the environment, but that's not the majority of us at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bottom line in the United States is capitalism.
Right.
You know,
That's the whole,
is
that's the whole
money-
problem, that
is-
sustainability
so-
is not the,
Back to how do we subsidize that? And do we have taxes for that instead of taxes on gasoline? Maybe we put taxes on something else that, because you have to generate money.
well, yeah. Go.
One of the striking elements of the novel was that it does make call out to that the cost sent to the consumer or the cost of manufacture does not accurately bear its environmental costs and its
Right.
costs into sort of future generations.
Right.
And there's like a high advocacy within the novel for that to actually bear out for the actual producers to sort of like take on the brunt of what that cost really means. And to either reflect it in prices, because though things are sold cheaply, they don't actually carry a cheap societal cost. So for that to be accurately reflected in between the pricing, but also in between sort of the actual manufacturing process too. That was striking, and then the other thing that was striking that you called out on the slide is that the idea that the ecology and economics draw from the same Greek root word, which is sort of that management of home and the management of sort of where one lives, and sort of that ideal, right, or that idea of spaceship Earth, the
Yeah.
idea that is as much as Elon Musk may make their way to Mars, and if you're lucky, potentially colonizers, that the vast majority of the world has to sort of live with what they're currently living now.
With their
But
heritage.
eventual
Yeah.
effects of that.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons he wrote Ecotopia, the thing he was concerned about was sewage. That was what yeah. So if you could have something that could break down and then enhance the soil
Become
over time, fertilizer, yeah. I mean, that would be the most ideal thing.
I mean, I guess in our own without thinking about government structures, you know, in our own little worlds, there are hopeful things everybody can do, right? And one of them is, you know, don't buy new. I personally would like to have my own electric car that I don't own, but that comes to me.
Yeah,
That
Yeah.
comes to my house and that I can have a conversation with.
well, you know, there is Waymo.
Database.
But
Yeah.
then you'll compare this maybe?
Yeah.
Picks me up.
Yeah.
And knows where the places that I
Yeah.
go.
Yeah,
And takes me there. And
Yeah.
they're like the same idea as the bike racks. You know,
right,
I
the white
wanna
bicycle,
have, like,
yeah,
local little stations where these cars come right when you call, 10 minutes away,
yeah,
always available.
yeah, and if they were, you know, reasonably priced, that would
If
really
they
help,
were reasonably priced,
Yeah.
you would not drive a car.
right,
It
absolutely.
would not, it would not.
And there could be, it could be like a little pod car, it doesn't have to be this big,
anything. It's
could be
just
like the size of a
on
golf
the
cart.
freeway, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
going the big,
yeah,
you know, Waymo thing. We
Yeah.
don't need that. We don't need 4 seats in that at all. It's one person going in that
Right.
car.
right,
But that's a different design, right?
yeah.
There's that little track platforms that were supposed to be in markets. Yeah.
All right, that little platform, yeah, you just step onto it and it moves and then you just step off when you get to the stop, yeah,
Everybody can get to market.
yeah,
One of
Just
the,
about as places you could be on here.
yeah, Geary would be a great place for that. Yeah,
one of the elements you emphasized in your presentation is the headway aspect, they're coming every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And sort of that reliability.
Yeah.
Reliability.
I mean, in the
Yeah.
long run, yes, efforts haven't been made that have bore out as expected in terms of the bus only lanes.
yeah, that has been very successful, I think, and it's made it better for cars too. Yeah, it took so long, but it's turned out to be really
Yeah.
good, yeah,
But everybody finds them incredibly more reliable than ever before.
yeah,
On a long road.
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it has to be affordable, it has to be
Reliable,
reliable, and it
yeah.
has to, you know, be available to and accessible, so.
Yeah,
Those are great ideas.
It's truly like a public resource.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a public resource like the bike.
yeah,
You know, I don't think there's a lot of money in bikes.
yeah,
You know, you take it, you ride it, you whatever, but at 75.
we're not riding the
I
bike,
don't know.
yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah, Morgan,
It should be available and, yeah.
But I would definitely take that little car. If it
Yeah.
zipped up to the house.
yeah,
That'd be the first one.
Morgan,
Yeah, I've been thinking of things on 2 very different levels. First, like we're talking the individual level. For example, I have these things are anathema to me, but once a year I go on a trip somewhere, or twice a year, and you get these. So I save them and I use them. I wash them for like 2 years and I just take a few. And they have good memories of the trip, so I don't ever take a new plastic bottle, and it drives me nuts when people do, because they're everywhere.
yeah.
I
I've got a glass bottle,
Well,
really nice.
yeah,
Thick
I
ones.
also go through my kitchen and I think, oh God, I still have those bowls, those pots and pans. Well, that's good, they work. There's no reason to replace them, so maybe don't replace things. And then you don't get rid of them either. One thing that I'm concerned about is packaging, like I buy a certain kind of yogurt.
Yeah,
And I would love to just take the old yogurt thing and get it filled up. I know it would be, there's health issues and stuff, but I can't. And even then, when I have these old yogurt things, you know, that have the 2-quart one, the 2-cup one from Trader Joe's, I reuse it. I put frozen stuff in it, but you can only reuse so many. I was taking them to a club I know where people always have extra food, so I would leave them there and people could take the extra food home. But the other level I was thinking at is really big picture, looking at our country. Reading an article now by David Brooks in the New Atlantic. And he's talking about our situation, the polarization and so forth, so forth. And he says, one of the things that's necessary is a new ideology that is more attractive than the current ideology that's damaging our country. I'm not going to go more into it. But it seems to me that our common earth, our environment, where we live, and then from that, the principles of society that are in this book seem to be an option. Because who can agree with that? And if you really press people, you know, are you willing to just destroy the earth for your own convenience or anger?
Maureen, you mentioned the current ideology. Could you define that a little more?
Which is also polarized too, between the people leading it who are interested in one thing and most of the people voting for it whose goals are not going to be met. But anyway, he was sort of putting this out as and talked about an earlier period of history that resulted in a lot of social reforms and morals in the early, say, 1900s and 1930. So,
Mhm.
and I haven't gotten that far in that point. Maybe he proposes something, but this seems.
Well, I think the reality is that either we change our ways or we're going to be forced to change our ways when we are just drowning in the garbage. And I mean, technology has a place to help us, like you're saying, using AI to figure out how to make something truly recyclable. I mean, I think that.
Yeah, another problem.
Well, that is another problem, but I think it's as a research tool. I mean, there are certain things, right? There's too many variables for the human mind to like.
Yeah.
1,000 postdocs or technicians or
Yeah.
researchers, you need AI and maybe 20 postdocs
Yeah.
to crank out a solution.
Yeah.
Removal of carbon from the atmosphere. Is it a device that's even plausible?
Yeah, well, Iceland is doing it.
Well,
They're
trees
burying.
do it, but-
Trees do it.
Exactly.
do
I
it.
mean, mimic the
Yeah.
tree in the
Yeah.
scale because
Yeah.
India and China and the development of Africa is not going to slow down. I think they may be following an older paradigm that's very polluting. That's all. Yeah.
Or they may be actually ahead of us. China is producing incredible amount of solar panels,
They are.
really driven down the price of solar panels. So we may be following them. Yeah.
Yes, but
It's so crazy. Yeah.
they're both the villains and the heroes.
Yeah.
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 I think because they manufacture
Yeah.
everything, so they produce
Yeah.
so much more carbon than
Yeah.
everybody else
Yeah.
combined. So
Yeah. I mean, one of the ways we might think about it is the library. I mean, here is the library. It's this common resource. People don't own these books. They come and borrow the books. They read them. They bring them back. It's a really sustainable kind of model. Like, how could we use that kind of thinking for some of our things?
Have examples of that, like they might have a library of everything collection.
Or tools, right? Yeah.
Common household items.
Yeah.
Bikes, things like that.
Yeah.
So you don't own it, but you can check it out at the library.
That's a
So
great
it
idea.
can be like a testing space, and it's already in, libraries are in most communities, which is, I think, our greatest strength, is that we already have a stronghold.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And you're also not, you're sort of government, but sort of not government. You're sort of in a quasi situation. I don't know.
I think I assume most libraries are government funded, but there is a fundraising arm that
Yeah.
relies on.
But
donations.
weren't libraries started by the billionaires of the time, the millionaires, the Carnegie and
For some,
all that? Yeah.
That
Yeah.
he actually
built.
built,
The initial funding, but most libraries were funded by.
Government
local
now.
property taxes.
Yeah.
You know, I was just in Denmark a while, and they're doing away with the postal service because they digitize everything.
Mm,
And
Interesting.
everything is done by email and everything is a stamp. Right now in Copenhagen, it's
Yeah.
$9.
wow.
$9. So who's going to buy that stamp? But they're trying to do away with paper,
Yeah.
you know?
Well,
they're-
when you look in your
it's-
mailbox, you're thinking, this is a great idea with all the crap that comes in the
It's
mail.
garbage, you
Yeah.
put it that can't be
Election
recycled,
season.
that
Yeah,
can't be recycled.
elections, yeah.
100 pieces of advertisement come
Yeah.
through. You know, I stayed with a friend of mine who has lived in the same house for, he's the 5th generation in the same
Wow,
house. And
wow.
this house has nothing in it.
That's
Zero
so great.
clutter.
Wow.
He has 6 cups. And I said, well, what happens when the 7th person comes? He said, you have to wash that thing. He never had over, but you know, it's just like a whole different.
That's
it's
so
a whole
great.
Different idea.
Yeah.
Of being
Yeah.
sustainable.
Yeah.
They don't buy things, they don't.
Yeah.
And what happened to the repairman?
The repairman, yeah.
You know, why don't they teach that in middle school? I would
Yeah.
Shout out to the book.
Yeah,
You know, about
absolutely,
teaching things.
absolutely, yeah.
Repair.
Yeah, well, things have to be repairable.
Yeah.
They have to
do.
be built in such a way that you could replace the thing that could be. I mean, most things you can't even open them up anymore.
Boy,
Right.
did-
Yeah, but you just throw it
Yeah.
away because
Yeah.
it's cheaper.
You buy a new one.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to buy a new one. You're not gonna be able to repair it.
Ooh, the replacement.
Yeah,
One of the things that it anticipates, adding on to your slide is sort of the idea of recorded lectures and recorded material made available thereafter. And then just to touch on what was just mentioned in terms of, there's a 7th person. It's sort of connecting to your blue zones aspect.
Mhm.
It's not just sort of the large scale shifts in society culture that is advocated through the group. It's also sort of this idea of much more communal living. And this
Yes.
idea that
Yes.
6 cup can be
yes,
not 6 people are gonna be sick at a party, right? Sharing cup.
yeah.
But that.
Well, you know, there was, before the pandemic, there was this sort of move to bring your own cup to the coffee house. You'd bring your own cup and you'd fill your coffee that way. I mean,
Yeah.
that sort of fell off after the pandemic kind of put
Yeah.
a jinx on that, but could certainly bring that back.
Practical thing, I work with some people from Estonia, and this is something elaborate to do when you're having a party. You can check out cups and plates and
Yeah,
forks and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and then wash it. And
I thought Goodwill
rather
should
than
start
just,
that,
Yeah,
a rental,
a
well,
rental, a
that's kinda
goodwill,
standard and,
yeah.
you know. Yeah.
you know, you can just get it set and then you can bring it back.
Right, because, you know, often you have a party and you have 20 people, but then you don't have 20 people every day in your house. You just need those extra things, yeah, yeah. Interesting. All right, so the other part of the blue zone is not sitting too long, so I'm going to invite you to get up and move.
I used to get up at 10 in the morning till I made some tender corn. Then I met some ladies from Marin. We took the highway to the one off the coast of Cat. On Sunday left me with these blisters on my skin. To know we're gone, so I kept on going. I drove to see train that took me right back home to you. So caffeinated, I wish they were golden.